Hello, this is Virtualis the Chess Noob, learning and having fun with chess. The Vienna game is my favourite opening. However, it isn't too often that I match with an opponent who understands the Vienna at the beginner intermediate level. However, on the last weekend, I played a couple of super fun games with a player from the Netherlands who initially used the Vienna gambit against me. My opponent won the first game and I managed to win the rematch. As typical with the Vienna, once we were out of the opening theory, the games were wild and aggressive, with plenty of errors on both sides. I hope you enjoy. Let's have a quick look at the first game. So my opponent from the Netherlands, and in this game, we both had, probably not terribly great accuracy, fairly wild game going up and down. We both had some good moves. My opponent played better than me. I had, a good share of blunders in this game. As per the chess.com robot, this was an intense and serious game. So let's go to the analysis. All right, so I played the game with black, and so the opponents opened with e4. I played e5, and when the opponent played knight c3, it went, ooh, the Vienna. So I played knight to f6, and the opponent launched the Vienna gambit against me. Now, as I know a little bit about the Vienna, so I played pawn to d5, entering the main line of the Vienna. So any move other than d5 is pretty much bad. And so we continue with some of the book moves, and now we play some chess. Now at this point, we'd pretty much definitely I had exhausted my understanding of theory, and we start to see some deviation from what is best. So that was a very good move by the opponent, setting up a nice chain of pawns. And at this point, I realized I probably made a mistake in the opening somewhere, given that it wasn't entirely clear what were good moves. So h5, that is completely what would I say? It's not an intuitive move. So I developed my bishop so that I could castle, but there weren't really very many good squares for the bishop. The opponent develops their bishop, I castle. They launch a flank pawn attack, h4. Now at this point, I thought, that looks like a free pawn. And I realized afterwards that this was a mistake. And as computer said, blunder, serious, poor move here. And the reason for that is that now I have rather weakened my defenses on the king side, and I have already castled on the king side. So that all I did in capturing that pawn is give the opponent rook an open file facing down my king. That bishop is strong, that bishop is strong, and a queen is on that side. So this was definitely a mistake. What I should have played was, as computer said, pawn to f6 to try to open up this center and potentially also to open the file for my rook. So this was a bad move for me. I thought here that I might be able to do a trade. That doesn't really work. So this is this pattern, very powerful, forced to move here. And then there's a discovered check, of course, by the rook. So I am in very, very serious trouble. Incredibly, this is a scary thing about computers. Apparently a mate in 15 moves. I'm fairly sure my opponent didn't see that, but this is how seriously deficient this position is. I should not have taken that pawn with the bishop on h4. Now at this point, I decide to block with the bishop. So the rook captures back. The opponent captures back with the bishop. So I've moved my rook over to potentially give a little bit of extra protection. Opponent castles, long castles, bringing another attacker into the game. attack on the queen. And at this point, I think I was just hoping not to get checkmated in very short order. I decided to capture. The opponent here makes a blunder. However, I didn't really see what I was supposed to do. So all I could tell was that I was potentially at high risk of a mating attack, and I was trying to work out what I could do to block that attack. And eventually, I decided to move rook to g7, and I missed the better move, rook to g6. So blocking the queen without having to capture. So captures. Um, and at this point, I was fairly sure I was in very serious trouble. I was trying to work out, was there a possible way that I could do a queen trade. I kept potentially calculating moves that led to a loss of my potentially a loss of my rook or loss of my queen because of how exposed my king is. I eventually made that move thinking that that I would be potentially able to force a queen trade. Again, that was a bad move. I looked at that move, but I think I miscalculated the move queen to h8. I thought that the opponent would definitely be able to capture a piece if I did that, but apparently that was the best move. Captures, and at this point I was happier. I thought I navigated that scary looking position, and the computer agreed that somehow I made it through the wilderness. Yep, I was wondering how I could potentially launch a counterattack, and unfortunately I was just not effective here. So queen attacking that pawn. I was really wondering what was the best approach here, and rather than potentially playing somewhat more conservatively, um, I decided to go on the attack, hoping that I could force the opponent to blunder something. Here, ostensibly, attacking a number of pieces. However, the opponent finds the best move, and I'm kind of stuck. And I thought for a while here, and I realized that that my sort of a gamble didn't pay off, that somehow the opponent has defended all their pieces. So, did a check, but, that doesn't really achieve anything. I was forced to withdraw, and I'm now much worse. Opponent captures that undefendable pawn. Check. Attacking the queen. Yep. So in serious trouble. Managed the queen trade, and at this point I was fairly sure I was going to have a very tough time converting the position. So even though I have a rook for a bishop, the opponent still has 5 pawns, and I with one. Very difficult game to play. Some checks, but couldn't really achieve very much, and the opponent has really protected their pieces very well here. There's very little that I can do to attack. Move my pawn forward, and here I thought, now, is there some tricky thing that I could do with my knight? Now, I'm not terribly good with rook and knight endgames, so lots of mistakes here. Yep, so here putting attack on the bishop. Even if I took the bishop, there are some questions on whether or not that's good or not. So here the opponent's doing very well, protecting pretty much everything. Very well played. Yep, again, trying to see whether I could do some things with checks. And I actually did have an opportunity here, which was at this point. The opponent actually made a fairly serious error, and they went all the way back to equality. So the opponent really should have moved the king over to try to escort these pawns here. And here was the part where I didn't see what I should do. I had an opportunity here to move the king forward, which would effectively block off the king's escape squares here. This knight already blocks off that escape square for the king. And so if the opponent didn't see that net, that would potentially be checkmate. Unfortunately, I didn't see that during the game. I only saw that during analysis. So a little bit too late, I suppose. So here I got a little bit greedy. You know, could it be? Could I sort of could I take things back? But no dice. That doesn't achieve anything without the knight being in that position and without the king having moved forward. So a few more checks, but now the opponent has moved the king over to these pawns, and you know, I try to fight valiantly, but there is not much win here. There's not much that can be done. And eventually the opponent has escorted the king all the way to sort of their what would be their seventh rank, and so promotion seems inevitable now. Yep, and at this point I decide to call it in. Clearly the opponent has seen that probably the best way that they can convert this is simply to promote the pawn on the A file. And no point for me to continue here. Good game. I sent the message, a message to the opponent here, given that they played Vienna, complimented them on their fine game. And no, they noted that in fact I had a YouTube channel, and so we opted to play another game as a rematch. So let's look at the second game. All right, so here's the second game, and in this game we can see that I am the one playing white. Let's have a quick look at the review. Might drop off the video. There we are. So in this game, I played somewhat better, a shorter game. No, we both, again, even within, I think, 11 or so moves, both had our share of mistakes and blunders. Such is the way with the Vienna. But in this game, I do play relatively well, and I was managed to clinch the win. So let's go to analysis now. Here we are. So e4, and the opponent here decided to play f6 first, but nonetheless we sort of transpose back into the Vienna gambit with f4, and the opponent of course knows the main line, the only good move, which is d5 in this position. Captures, and here en passant, opponent captures back the pawn, which they probably should not have done. They should have probably captured with their knight, because now the structure here with their split pawns is a substantial weakness. And as you can see, I'm quite a bit ahead after the opening. Queen out, putting pressure on that knight. Here, this was probably not the best move, but I thought, why not? You know, there's a potential attack here as well, given that the opponent moved out their bishop. The opponent moved out their developed their knight. So even if I capture, I can't then take the rook, which is a good idea. At this point, I wasn't entirely sure what was the best move, so I decided to advance that knight. I'm well out of theory now, and this is one of the things with aggressive systems using the Vienna. It's often not very clear what would be the best move. The opponent moves their pawn, which again it was a blunder. I capture the bishop. The opponent then checks. I thought that this was going to be a problem, but apparently that was quite okay. Apparently that was okay. So I was concerned if I move up that the opponent would capture with the knight, and I would not be able to capture back, given that I would then hang my rook. But apparently that was okay. However, in this position, I do have this very forcing move, this very good move. So I am still okay. And here the opponent retreated their knight, perhaps missing the more obvious move, which is here, which could put me in check put me in check here as well. That would have been a very, very good move, very strong move for black, but they missed it. And at this point, they resigned, seeing no, I think they saw that the writing was on the cards here. And as you can see, there's these wild changes in valuation based on a single move. And the opponent resigned. And I won the second game. GG. Thank you for the opponent for a really fun morning while I had my morning chess games with my coffee. The main line and best response to the Vienna gambit is for black to play pawn to d5. The chess databases indicate that from this position, both black and white have equal winning chances for both master games and community games. I hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching.